Hey, Mr. Childs here, AP Statistics. Well, boy, do we have a lot to go over today. I believe those of you who are into the internet know he is Pusheen, so he will assist me. Also, out of nowhere comes my other assistant, Mr. A. I didn't think he was going to be with us today, but he demanded to be part of it. Okay, like I said, we got a lot to go over today. So let's start with some fun and then we'll do the serious stuff. Right. I'm going to start by hitting you up with some funny jokes. I told you back in the class that I always wanted to be a comedian. Well, I finally get my chance because you're a captive audience. Hopefully, you're listening to me. All right, here we go. These are going to make you happier. I can almost assure you. Here we go. Number one, why was the fraction apprehensive about marrying the decimal, marrying each other? And the answer is because he would have to convert. What's that all about? Converting fractions to decimals. All right, you didn't like that one? All right, let's move on to number two. Why do plants hate math? Why do plants hate math? Because they have square roots. Square roots. Math plants with the roots. Yeah, okay. Didn't like that one either. Okay, number three. I like this one. This is a little bit more statistical. Why did the student get upset when his teacher called him average? Kind of like our P1 world now, average. Okay, so I'll read it again. Why did the student get upset when his teacher called him average? It was a mean thing to do. The mean, the average, they mean the same thing. Okay, that was a little better, you have to admit. Pusheen's like, yeah, that was better. Okay, number four. Why was the math book depressed? Why was the math book depressed? I bet if you thought this one, you could get it. Because it had a lot of problems in it. Oh, yeah, a lot of problems. Ha, 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 ha. That one wasn't very funny. And my fifth and final one for the day is this. I'm sorry those of you who have no sense of humor, but we need a little humor in times like these. Why is the obtuse triangle always so frustrated? Why is the obtuse triangle always so frustrated? Because it's never right. Right triangle, obtuse triangle. Okay, that's our attempt at humor. Boom. Now we're serious. Into seriousness. Here we go. Number one, APers. I'm talking to people who have not opted out of the test, that they're still in line for the test. I saw a webinar yesterday which kind of gave some updating. It is really different. So listen closely if you don't already. Some of you may already know this, or all of you may already know this, but let's get clear anyway. Number one, it is on Friday, May 22nd at 2 p.m. Friday, May 22nd at 2 p.m. Okay on that? Remember, it's from your house. You're going to be taking it on some computer device that you have. Number two, and shockingly, this is shocking to me, it is 45 minutes long. 45 minutes. That's not, I'm not making light of that and funny. That's not very much time. Next, They are all free response. There's no multiple choice. You know, any of you with devious minds, which is probably all of us to some degree, what a temptation with multiple choice tests for some sort of shenanigans. Anyway, they're all free response, short answer tests. So things are different. All those multiple choice questions that we practiced, they're not going to be on there. Next, a shocker, another shocker. You can use your textbook. I mean, it would be a pretty big temptation anyway, wouldn't it? I mean, so they're just alleviating you of that temptation. You can use your textbook. Next, it was told there are, I mean, I don't know what the monitor, what Big Brother is doing monitoring the cheat, but there's supposedly anti-cheating software involved. So I really don't know how. I've always wondered on these math courses on the internet how testing is handled. Usually you go somewhere where a proctor gives you a test, but I guess it isn't happening that way now. So there you go. That is important directions. So once again, Friday, May 22nd, 2 p.m., 45-minute test. 45 minutes. Wow. You know, keep in mind, ours was going to be 2 hours and 30 minutes if it had been the original way. You can use your textbook, and there is anti-cheating software. Also, you know, obviously there's no multiple choice questions. Okay with that? All right. Send me an email if you have any questions, and I will try to get to the bottom of it. They also list, I'm sure they have sent to you, there are instructional beyond me and what I'm doing here in these little lessons. There are instructional courses and different ways that you can get information to study. I'm telling you, I'm your teacher, so I am telling you, I would go to the AP Statistics website, and on the website are all the free response questions that have been given all the way back to year 2000. If I was studying it hardcore, I would look at those the answers are given with those questions. I would look over especially the last 5 years, and do those questions and know those questions really well. The answers are there. We will be doing some of the concepts in the next couple of weeks, but we're not going to get deep enough probably for what would be necessary for that. Although I don't, maybe not. I don't know with a 45-minute test, maybe the questions aren't deep. I don't know. So I'm giving it my best shot here. We're moving ahead to chapter 22 today. So if you would turn with me to page 496 and 497. And what we are doing, I'm not going to write the words on the board. I'm going to save it for my calculations. But we are looking at the difference between two proportions. If we took two different proportions and we asked the question, is there a statistical difference between the two? That's what we're trying to find out today. And we can do it both from confidence intervals, which we will do today, and also through hypothesis tests, which we will do next time, okay? So today, we're going to do confidence intervals with it. And you got to follow kind of closely here because it's more complex than when we did it with one proportion. So if you are looking at the book there, like I always try to do, try to keep it current and try to keep it interesting. These are the two proportions I came up with today. The first one I am going to call P sub O, P sub O. And I am going to say it is people that are greater than 50 years old. And then we're going to do P sub Y. And these are people under 50 years old. And we're not going to get all, well, why don't we just say the greater than or equal to on the greater, because you become a senior citizen. I'm one of those. I'm in that category. Okay, so that's what we're going to do today. I'll get the viewer up closer to it when you really need to get it. But for today, we're looking at those two proportions. We're going to take a sample of each one of these proportions, each one of these groups, each one of these groups, and we are going to ask the question, this is my question, listen closely. Is there a difference between the level of fear of contracting the coronavirus? A very serious topic, but I thought, hey, let's do something real. So that's our question. Is there a difference between the level of fear or anxiety, if you want to use that word, whatever, of getting the coronavirus? Okay, so look at page 497. I just kind of went over the beginning part. So we're looking to see if there is a difference. Is there a statistical difference between PO and PY? And I tell you what, we're going to rely on the calculator pretty heavily today because the computation can get quite complex. And remember, I'm supposed to make this not, something that you can really do. So follow me and we can do it. All right. So I'm going to look for a 90. Let's follow down with me on page 97. We're going to look for a 95% confidence interval. 95% confidence interval. Okay. Now, remember, before we can do any of these tests, we always have to do the assumptions and conditions. Okay. So I'm not going to write those on the board. I'm going to look at them with you. If you look at it, it says randomized condition. So we would have done, it says Gallup poll in the one they did. Let's say we were doing a Gallup poll and we polled a random sample of U.S. adults and young people over and under 50. Now, I'm looking for the N. Hold on here. Let's make it real easy. We'll make it real easy, and we will say that N is 500 for both. We did a national survey. N, we'll call it NO, which is N old, equals 500. And NY, which is the number of young people, 500. Okay? We're going to keep these numbers really basic. And next is the 10% condition. Remember that makes sure that the sample isn't too large. Obviously, 500 people each is much less than 10% of all the population. I didn't know that much about the population in the United States, but with all this statistics that we get about the coronavirus, I'm starting to realize more about it. It's about 340 million, I think, something like that. So don't quote me on that. I think it's about that. Okay, so we're going to say that one checks out, independent of the two groups. Here's it. Let's look at that one closely. The sample of men and the sample of women are independent of each other. There is no influence from one to the other. So with Oz, it isn't women and men, it's young and old. So they would not be influencing anyone else. You know, you wouldn't be saying, hey, Mr. Childs, are you scared to get the coronavirus? You can't do that. That's not allowed. No influence. Okay. And then the success failure. And we are going to say that checks out, that all of them, yeah, you could do the math on all of those. We haven't come up with our percentage yet, but we're going to shortly. But we're going to say it checks out. All right, so here we go. Here's our big, we need our P hat. So P hat for old. We are going to say what percent are afraid. I think you'd have to be quite a tough guy like me. No, I'm not saying that. But we're going to say that the 80% of people are afraid in the old group to get the coronavirus. 80%. And I'm just kind of making this up on the fly. Let's say that P hat Y is equal to 65%. 65%. Okay. I think we all know. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Young people think they're stronger. You know, if you're 80 years old or something, my parents are about that age, so I'm very concerned. You know, when you're older, you're closer to death, I guess is the easiest way of saying that. So I think we've got all our vital things right now. So let's go down, and it says, under these some conditions, the sampling distribution of the difference between the sample proportions is approximately normal. So we'll find a 2 proportion Z interval. Okay, get your calculators out right now. Get your calculators out. And where are we going to go? I can't hear you. We're going to the stat key and over to tests. And we are looking for a 2 proportion Z interval. And guess what? I haven't done this in a while, so I'm looking around. If you see it, say it before I see it. 2 proportion Z test. 2 proportion Z interval, B. Go down to option B and hit enter. And then for the X1, it says X1 there, and it wants the number of successes. So the number of successes, we know, first of all, I'll hold it. Oh, incredibly important point. Remember back in pre-algebra, addition, the order of the terms did not matter. Multiplication, it did not matter. But does it matter in subtraction? Yes, it matters. And it is very important. It's probably one of the most important parts of this particular activity. So we're going to start with old minus the young, okay? So it says X1. So we said old. So you can do the calculation right in there to get the number of successes. So 0.8 times 500 gives you 400. That's good. So 400 out of 500. N1 is 500. Then down to 0.65 times 500. And that gives you 325. We're so happy that they came out even. Because if they didn't come out even, what are you going to do? If we're talking about people, you're always going to round up one, okay? You can't have any decimals in that line or you're going to get an error message. Then we're going to say out of 500, So everyone got that? 400, 500, 325, 500. Hopefully that showed up for you. Good. Then we want 95% confidence. And if you look, I believe you came up with an interval between about 9.5 and 20.4. That is your interval. Now here, we really got to stress this. What does that mean? Remember, we were talking about the difference between the two, the difference here. So that is the difference, okay? It's not, it isn't what one group or the other group felt. There is a between a 9.5 or about, you could say between a 10 and a 20% difference between the two groups. Okay? Now, here, remember the order on the subtraction. It's positive, isn't it? Both of them are positive. So which one is higher? Which has the higher percentage? Old. Old minus young. So both positive. So we can say that there is between a 9.5 and a 20.4% difference with older people being that much more fearful of getting the coronavirus than the younger people. If you see that, there's a lot of heavy computation at the bottom of that page. I'm not getting into that in today's lesson. We're going to use the calculator, okay? And so if you look at the bottom of 498, that's where they come up with that concluding statement. So what they were saying is if you subtracted the two, you would get 15%, what do you think about that 15%? It's right in the middle of that interval, isn't it? Remember, the interval is a plus minus. It would be the proportion, the difference between the proportion plus or minus the margin of error. How could we find the margin of error between those two? Come on, I bet you know. You divide it in half, wouldn't you? So it'd be about 5%, I think, if we did that out. But okay, this is kind of complex, probably one of the more complex things we've done all year. So I want you to get it first off, is we said, is there a statistical difference between old people over 50? I guess I'm going to have to say I'm old. I'm over 50. Old people and young people when it comes to contracting the coronavirus. So we took a random sample of 500 people each, and we came up with this. We came up with this as the interval, with the older people being more worried, okay? And that makes sense, I think. So let's look at the final statement there on page 498. It says, I am 95% confident that the proportion of American men who think, all right, that's with that particular problem. But we will change it and say, I am 95% confident that the proportion, the difference in the two proportions of older and younger people has a difference between 9.5 and 20.4%, with the older people being more afraid, okay? And I think that's about it. So I'm worried about this one. This one's a little more complex than the other things we've done, but I think you can do it. But I want to say it again. We're trying to see, is there a difference? And we found out there is a difference here between 9.5 and 20.4. Here you go. This is where we're going to look at next time with the hypothesis test. Is there, even though there is a difference, is it statistically significant? Now listen to this one closely. Just kind of like with the hypothesis test, when I said when P is low, reject HO. When P is low, reject HO. Well, here's a new one. It is 0 in the interval? If 0 is in the interval, then there is no statistical difference. But if 0 is not in the interval, then there is a statistical difference. Do you see 0 in that interval? I don't. So what are we going to say? We're going to say what? We're going to say, yes, there is a statistical difference. And we're looking at the old people being between 9.5 and 20.4% more afraid of contracting the coronavirus. Wow, we did it. Oh, man. I was kind of where I've been preparing all day. I didn't know how this one would go. Pusheen was also prepping me. I think you know who he is. I don't know who he is, but my wife says that he's on the internet. So I pulled him in as a guest lecturer today. Okay. So what I would like you to do, we're looking at next week as vacation week. I just being teacher, daddy, whatever you want to call it. If you're going to take that exam, I would be thinking about AP statistics next week. I really would. And so once again, it is on Friday, May 22nd at 2 p.m. It is a 45-minute test. All free response. All free response. You can use your textbook, like all formula. Everything will be there. They say they have some anti-cheating software. You guys know a whole lot more about electronics and what you can get away with and not than I do. So I'm just announcing that, and you should be on guard for that type of thing. Not that any of you would do anything unethical. I'm certainly not saying that. Okay, now, all right. So I wanted to give you just a little practice with this. I'm just going to shuffle the numbers around a little. Now, you may say, I can't do this. Well, follow right along on that 496, 97, and 98, and just use our little scenario, and you can do the same thing I did. Okay? Once again, I want to tell you the final concluding statement is that I am 95% confident that the true difference between the proportion of old people and young people who are fearful about contracting the coronavirus is 9.5 up to 20.4, telling who is more, which is the old people are more fearful. Boom, you've got it. That's it. So let's change to, now I'm fully expecting you to use the calculator and not doing the whole, you can do it out computational wise here, no problem, but I'm not expecting it. Just the answer would be good. To be very honest with you, just that concluding statement would be wonderful. Just give me that final concluding statement and we'll call it good for today's lesson. All right, let's change. We're going to keep the age the same. Why not change the confidence level? That's not a big deal. We'll change it to 90% confident. Remember, you're just going to plug that into your calculator anyway. We'll keep the ends the same, but we will change these. Let's get them a little closer together. Let's say 75 and 70%. Let's get it a little closer there. So P hat for the old people are 75%, and P hat for the young people is 70%. And then, of course, this will be different. I think that's going to work. I really do. I'm going to say it again because people sometimes can't see up here. P0 is people, P sub O is people older than 50. P sub Y is people younger than 50. We're looking for a 90% confidence interval. Both of the samples were 500 people. P old is 75%. We're afraid to contract the coronavirus. P young is 70%. Okay, so send that in. Now on Friday, I will, I've been trying this routine of 3 times a week. I guess theoretically Friday is vacation, but I'm gonna keep with my little routine anyway. I'm not gonna give a problem, but I'm gonna check in with you on Friday. Yeah, why don't we do that? Try to get this thing in by Friday, and we will do it over again with and see what the numbers come out to be. Okay, that was quite a lengthy session, but I didn't give you any problem on Monday, so I feel okay about that. Well, remember all our funny jokes. I hope you remember all the 5 funny jokes. We'll have some more next time. Pusheen is looking the internet over to find some really funny ones. And if you have any questions about this or whatever I know about this very odd situation, I will certainly give you any information I've got. So we'll see you until Friday. Have a good night.